The broken warrior in the junkyard. Reese had seen strange things in his junkyard before. Cracked drones, forgotten ships, empty cargo crates drifting from forgotten battles. But nothing like this. The sun was low when he heard the alarm buzz near Sector 9. Not many bothered to trespass on his land. There wasn't much worth stealing. Just scrap, metal bones, dead machines. But this wasn't dead. A fighter pod had crashed into the side of an old supply hauler. The wreck still smoked. Reese climbed over a rusted wing and froze. Something was moving. He pulled his welding torch closer. His hand stayed near his sidearm. Then he saw her. A figure half buried under scrap, breathing heavy. Tall. Armored. One arm was twisted under her, and her leg bent wrong. Her faceplate was cracked, but her eyes still glowed faintly violet. A Draley. A warrior. Reese had only seen them once years ago during the final weeks of the border war. Fast. Merciless. Untouchable. But this one was bleeding, and alone. "You're lucky it was me," he said mostly to himself. He knelt beside her, carefully removed her helmet, silver blue skin. Short ridged tendrils instead of hair, blood on her chin. He opened his medkit and reached for the cauterizer. Her eyes snapped open. She grabbed his wrist with surprising strength. "Don't touch the core." Her voice was weak, but sharp. Reese didn't flinch. "Fine, but if I don't patch you, you'll be space dust in 20 minutes. She looked at him, then let go. He cleaned her wounds. Fast. Efficient. Quiet. She didn't cry out. Didn't wince. Just stared at him. When he finished, she tried to sit up. He helped her without asking. Then she looked around and said, "You touched my armor." "Why?" Reese blinked. "Because you were broken." He took her inside his workshop. The room was small, filled with half-finished projects and hanging wires. He laid her on the repair table. The glow from her chest plate flickered. Her fingers trembled as she reached toward it. Reese noticed the small hatch on the side of her gear was loose. He had fixed it earlier. She looked at him again. "You opened the life core," she said. "That is sacred." Reese stepped back, hands raised. "It was pulsing wrong. I didn't know what it was. I just stabilized the output." Her jaw clenched. "How?" "With a regulator coil and a fused temp. Seal from an old hoverbike." She stared at him, confused. Then, surprised, he turned away, giving her space. "Name's Reese," he said. "Mechanic, junk runner. Fixer of things not worth fixing." She didn't answer. He looked over his shoulder. "You?" A pause. Then, "Arisen." They sat in silence. As the night deepened, Reese worked on a nearby engine, not bothering her. Arisen lay still, watching him. Finally, she said, "You should have left me." "Yeah, probably. So why didn't you?" He shrugged. "I've seen too many machines die. Didn't want to watch another." She frowned. "I'm not a machine." He looked at her again, and this time he smiled. "No, you're something harder to fix." Outside, the wind blew dust across the metal fields. Inside the junkyard, under dim lights and between broken parts, something began to shift. Not trust, not yet, but something close. The tool that saved her life. The next morning, the junkyard was quiet. Just the wind, the creak of metal, and the hum of Reese's workshop generator. Inside, Arisen sat up on the repair table. Her movements were slow, but careful, controlled. Her leg was still wrapped in a temporary brace, and the cracks in her chest plate blinked softly. She was alive, but not whole. She looked around the room. Strange tools hung from the walls. Human tech, half-finished gadgets, old helmets, spark, wires coiled like snakes. Everything was organized in its own messy logic. Then she spotted the small workbench, and the core tool sitting on it. She froze. Reese came in holding a metal box filled with dried fruit and water packs. He stopped when he saw her staring at the tool. "Yeah," he said, setting the box down. That's what saved you. Arisen turned her head slowly. This isn't even war grade. Nope, Reese replied. It's from a mining rig, designed to fix energy valves and drill pumps. You used that on my life core? Worked, didn't it? She stood, wobbling for a second. You're lucky it didn't overload. You're lucky it didn't explode in my face, he said. Arisen's eyes narrowed, but she didn't argue. Instead, she limped over to the bench, picked up the tool, and turned it in her hands. How did you learn to stabilize a core? She asked. Reese scratched the back of his neck. Trial and error. She gave him a look, half surprise, half disapproval. You learned alien tech by guessing? No, I learned it by listening to what machines don't say. She was silent for a moment, then said, That's not how we're trained. Reese pulled up a chair. Yeah, well, you're a soldier. I'm a guy who talks to broken engines because no one else does. Engines don't speak, he grinned. You'd be surprised. She sat down too, slowly, watched him as he pulled out a burnt capacitor. This, he said, is from a Zanari flight suit. Picked it up last year from a wreck. Took me a week to figure out how to keep it from leaking charge. Arisen leaned forward, surprised. You repaired Zanari gear? Yep. Did anyone pay you? Nope. Then why do it? Reese looked at her seriously now. Because something built to fly shouldn't die in the dirt. Silence filled the room again. But not the heavy kind. A thoughtful kind. Arisen took off her cracked gauntlet and placed it on the table between them. Can you fix this? Reese looked at the damage. Saw where the energy conduit had snapped and where alien wiring had burned straight through the plating. He gave a low whistle. Not pretty, but I can try. She watched him carefully. If you ruin it. I know, he cut in. You'll kill me. Arisen blinked, then said quietly, No, I'd just fix it myself. Reese grinned and got to work. As his hands moved, Arisen studied him. He wasn't trained like her kind. He had no rank, no code, no armor. But he fixed things, and he didn't ask why she was here. He didn't demand loyalty or answers. He just helped. As the sun dipped low that evening, Reese tightened the final bolt and handed the gauntlet back to her. Done, he said. Shouldn't spark anymore. Probably. Arisen slipped it on, flexed her fingers, and for the first time since she'd arrived, she nodded. Thank you, she said. Reese shrugged. You're welcome. Want to see what I'm working on next? What is it? He pulled out a shattered alien flight module. Something I probably shouldn't be touching. Arisen stared at him, then sat beside him without a word, and they worked in silence. Together. The day the drones came, the wind was stronger that morning. It blew sharp dust across the open yard, sending light metal panels clattering across the ground. Reese stood on a rusted ladder, fixing a broken solar strip on the outer fence. Inside, the workshop, Arisen was repairing her chest plate in silence. Her movements were precise now, steadier. The dull glow in her armor was brighter since Reese had adjusted the cooling chamber the night before. For the first time, she almost felt like a warrior again. But something was wrong. The air changed. Not temperature, not pressure, intention. Her head snapped toward the southern ridge. 3 glints in the sky. Machines. Not birds. Not cargo. Pirate drones. Outside, Reese was humming a broken tune when the fence alarm buzzed twice, then died. He looked up. Too late. Red beam sliced through the solar panel above his head, missing him by inches. He fell backward off the ladder, landing hard on the sand. The first drone dropped into the yard with a screech, metallic limbs clicking as it scanned the area. Reese crawled back, fumbling for his pistol. He knew that model. Military salvage converted into pirate tech. Fast. No warnings. No rules. Inside the workshop, Arisen heard the blast. Her body moved before her mind did. She grabbed her blade from the wall, still dull but sharp enough, and stormed outside, just in time to see a second drone land near Reese. His pistol fired once, bouncing off its armor. It turned to him, a red light charging at the center of its chest, Then, Arisen leapt between them. Her shoulder hit the drone's core and both crashed hard into a pile of old scrap metal. Reese blinked. You came. Back. Arisen stood, panting, blade in hand. Of course I did. The drone behind her whirred and reactivated, rising fast. Look out, Reese shouted. But Arisen didn't move. She spun with perfect control and drove her blade through its neck joint, twisting until it dropped, sparking. The third drone hovered higher, scanning both of them now. Reese aimed again. His hand shook. Before he could fire, Arisen tossed a broken gear core straight into its sensor lens. A blinding flash burst, then a crack. Reese had shot its power casing while it was stunned. It fell. Silence returned, full and heavy. Reese dropped to one knee, breathing fast. Arisen stood tall, a cut across her cheek but otherwise calm. He looked up at her. You didn't have to. She didn't look at him. Yes, I did. They dragged the wrecks into the far pile, burned them, and reset the alarms. Later in the workshop, Reese poured water into 2 mugs. He handed one to her. She took it but didn't drink. Her voice was quiet. Why didn't you run? I fix things, he said. Not great at running. You almost died. So did you. She finally looked at him. I fought to protect a human. First time that's happened. Reese raised his mug. First time a Draley saved me. I'd say we're even. Arisen didn't smile, but her voice softened. Not even. Not yet. Outside, the wind blew again. But now it carried something new. Not just dust, but loyalty. Earned, not owed. Her oath in the dark. The night after the drone attack was silent. Too silent. Reese sat at his old wooden table, hands stained, with oil, staring at the small blade he'd found wedged in a broken drone joint. Pirate grade, he muttered. Not random. Someone sent them. Behind him, the workbench light flickered. Arisen stood there, adjusting the last piece of her repaired gauntlet. She had cleaned the burn on her cheek. Her armor looked newer now, patched, recharged, fully active. She didn't look like a visitor anymore. She looked like a warrior again. Reese turned to her. Your armor's almost fully restored, he said. You could leave. Arisen didn't answer. He tried again. Your ship's long gone. But you could call for extraction. I've got a transmitter that still pings deep range. Silence. Finally, she walked over, placed her gauntlet softly. On the table in front of him, he blinked. What's this? She spoke quietly. It carries the crest of Oathborn. Reese tilted his head. That sounds serious. It is, she said. Among my people, when a warrior is saved in battle, they owe a life oath. Protection, loyalty. No questions. That sounds like a contract. It's a vow, she corrected. Ancient, older than most of our stars. Reese leaned back, in his chair. So what? You owe me now? Yes. He shook his head, almost laughing. Look, I didn't save you for favors. It doesn't matter why, she said. I wear the oath now. You hate it, don't you? Yes. Reese chuckled. You're not great at hiding that. Harrison picked up the gauntlet again, turned it slowly in her hands. I was trained to never fall into debt, she said. Not to enemy hands, not even to our own. But you fell. She met his eyes. And you reached out. The lantern, above them, flickered again. Reese stood and walked to the shelf. He pulled down a small container. Inside, a packet of dry food and a tiny metal cup. He set it in front of her. Dinner. She stared at the offer, confused. This isn't tradition, she said. Nope, he replied. This is hospitality. Arisen slowly sat down, took the cup, and for the first time, drank something not made by her own kind. They ate in silence for a while. Then Reese asked, Do you have a squad? Arisen's jaw tightened. I did. Gone? She nodded. Ambush. Outer belt. I was the only one who escaped. Barely. Reese didn't push further, just said, I'm sorry. She nodded once. Me too. Later, as she stood near the door, she looked back. You don't accept my vow, she said. I don't want anything from you. You already have it. What? Her voice was calm, but firm. My protection. Until my life ends. Or yours does. Before he could reply, she stepped out into the dark, left the room heavy with something stronger than words. Not love. Not yet. But a promise. When silence broke. Days passed. Arisen stayed. Not as a guest. Not as a stranger. But as a presence. She helped Reese clean wreckage, repaired old engines, scanned sky patterns at dawn. She didn't speak much, but she listened. Always listened. And, Reese? He stopped asking when she would leave, because a part of him didn't want her to. The scrapyard grew quieter. Fewer drones came, fewer scavengers dared. Some said it was because the field was picked clean. Others whispered about a silver-eyed guardian who walked between the broken hulls at night, blade glowing faintly. Then one afternoon, a new ship landed at the far ridge, not crashing, not stealthy. Official. Controlled. Reese narrowed his eyes. Not pirates. Arisen stepped beside him, her jaw tensed. No, she said. They're worse. 3 armored figures stepped out, tall, plated in black and bronze. Hunters. Arisen turned to Reese. Stay behind me. He didn't move. Ari, what is this? They've come for me. The hunters reached the yard, one stepped, forward. Removed his helmet. His voice was cold. Arisen. By command of the Draley Tribunal, you are to return for judgment. Reese stood beside her, confused. Judgment for what? The hunter looked at him like he was nothing. For oath-breaking, for surviving when her squad did not, and for giving her trust to an alien. Reese blinked. Is that illegal? It is dishonor. Arisen didn't flinch. Her voice was steady. I invoked the vow of life bond. It was fulfilled. No, the hunter said. You wear his colors now. Reese looked down. His scarf, torn, dusty, tied around her arm from the day he wrapped her wound. She hadn't removed it. The second hunter drew a weapon. Step away from the human. Arisen moved forward instead. I will not. His life is mine to guard. The third hunter scoffed. Then we end it. Reese reached for his tool belt, but Arisen stopped him. Her eyes burned silver. You gave me safety. Now I return it. Before the first shot could fire, Arisen twisted, moving with speed no eye could follow. She knocked the weapon aside, threw one hunter to the ground. The others attacked, but she fought not to kill, only to defend, not as a warrior, but as a protector. When it was over, the hunters lay on the sand, not dead, but defeated. Arisen stood tall, her armor cracked, her breath sharp. Reese stared at her, wide-eyed. You could have run. I don't run. The hunters limped back to their ship. One turned and warned, next time, there will be no mercy. Arisen didn't reply. Reese stepped closer. You okay? She turned to him, slow. Silent. Then, softly. They thought I gave you something. And did you, he asked. She nodded once. Yes, my vow ended. But I stayed. Not because of honor. Because of choice. Reese didn't know what to say, so he said the only thing that mattered. Then stay, not for a debt, but for me. Arisen didn't smile, but her silence said yes. The gift that couldn't be bought. The next morning, the yard was still. Reese woke up earlier than usual, not because of alarms, not because of danger, because the workshop was too quiet. Arisen wasn't inside. He stepped outside, scanning the scrap piles. No movement. He checked the ridge, the sky, the comms. Nothing. His chest tightened. Had she left, without a word? Then he saw it. His workbench had been cleared, wiped clean. Tools sorted, coils stacked. Even his broken welding arm, the one he kept meaning to fix, was standing upright, fully repaired. And sitting on top of it, a black cloth bundle. Small, neat, important. Reese opened it slowly. Inside was a glowing crystal core, humming with gentle blue light. Connected to it, a narrow circuit net. Draley tech, polished and elegant, completely foreign and priceless. It was a power stabilizer. Not just any kind, this one could reboot dead engines, repair burnt circuits, even shield a weak ship through a solar storm, something no human could build, something not even the market could buy. A message was etched on a thin alloy tag. Your hands made me strong again. This will do the same for yours. Reese just stood there stunned. Then, footsteps behind him. Arisen stood in the doorway. You found it? She said. He turned. This is yours. Was, she corrected. Now it's yours. Why? You fixed what no one else could, not the gear. Me. Reese swallowed. You know you don't owe me anything now, right? I know, she said. So, why stay? Her eyes softened, not glowing, not guarded, just honest. Because I want to build something that doesn't break, she said. And I want to build it with you. He looked at the stabilizer again, then back at her. You gave me something I'll never replace. Arisen nodded once. You gave it first. They didn't hug. They didn't cry. They just stood there beside wrecked ships and broken memories, and knew something new had begun. Not as repayment, not as duty, but as a choice. The warrior who stayed. Months passed. The junkyard changed, not by much, but in small, steady ways. Solar panels now stood neatly across the fence. The old comms tower blinked steadily again. Sparks from the workshop lit the sky each night, and in the middle of it all, Reese and Arisen, two beings who were never meant to meet, never meant to fight together, never meant to care. And yet, they stayed. Visitors came sometimes. Scavengers, mechanics, even smugglers. They didn't ask too many questions when they saw the tall alien with silver blue skin working beside the human with dusty boots and clever hands. They just paid for their parts and left quickly. Most of them never returned. But stories did. People whispered about a human who could repair anything, even alien war gear, and a Draley warrior who watched the yard like a silent sentinel. They called her a bodyguard, a weapon, a ghost. But those who stayed longer saw something different. A glance, a nod, a quiet joke shared over greasy hands and blinking lights. Not duty, not fear, but trust. One night under soft starlight, Reese sat outside the workshop working on a busted old radio. The speakers buzzed, cracked, then fell silent again. This thing's hopeless, he muttered. Arisen leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. You said that about my armor. Reese looked up, smirking. And look at you now, standing, breathing, not exploding. Progress. She walked over and sat beside him. You still want to leave? He asked. No. Why not? She looked at the stars for a long moment, then said, because this place is quiet. And in all my years of war, I never heard quiet like this. Reese leaned back, closing his eyes. Me neither. They didn't say anything else for a while. Didn't need to. In the distance, the wind moved gently across the scrap piles. Machines slept. Wounds had healed, and two broken lives, one human, one alien, had found something that didn't need words. Not love, not yet, but something stronger, something real. Final line. I fixed her gear, and she gave me the one thing I could. Never build peace.